Hello everyone, welcome to yet another day in this clown decade, the decade where things are only going to get worse before they get better. And if you want to keep up with all things clown decade, please do subscribe to the channel and of course become a member. Now I will say before starting this video, yes I know that it's uncouth in online right circles to directly criticise Rupert Lowe or anything he does, but once again this video is going to be pretty much a collation of problems I've had with Rupert Lowe and going his own way for the past few months. Because while the odd useful nugget of information does come out in the work he does, largely it's a waste of time and energy, and I'm going to go through why. However, I would say, before watching this, and if you're interested, do go and watch my Downs and Tomlinson's Tory Revival Plan video, because it looks like the Zoomers are blatantly attempting a hostile takeover of the Tory party, and I think it's going to be every bit of a disaster as you could expect. Anyway, speaking of the Zoomers, I want to, well, set the tone for this video with a tweet from Charlie Downs. So Mr. Downs said, destroying leftists can no longer mean winning debates with brain-dead students on university campuses. I just think Charlie Kirk was very useful debating on university campuses because these people will never hear an alternative right-wing view in the 3 years they're in university college. It must mean systematically gutting their patronage networks, that can be useful, prescribing or closing down their organisations, that can be useful, outlawing their symbols, I don't think that's necessarily useful, and imprisoning their leaders. If they've committed a crime, yes. Debate died with Charlie Kirk, that's not true at all, God rest his soul, now it's time for action. Very much bigging up yourself. I want ultimate state power. I'd love to be the modern day Cromwell type tweet that I cannot help but constantly find cringe, because everyone who says it is a man saying it behind a PC, and at most does nothing more than talk about the issues at hand rather than actually trying to get into the political sphere. Charlie, I suppose, actually is doing a bit more by getting involved in Restore Britain, but from what I hear, he's basically just the PR face of it. Everything behind it, the people calling the shots, it's Rupert Lowe's team. Rupert Lowe's team that got him kicked out of Reform UK, by the way. So it just goes to show their political instincts straight off the bat. Anyway, Charlie Downs' very next tweet after this was this. Today we launch our first campaign, mass deportations of all those living in Britain illegally, no exceptions. Sign the petition here. Yes. The whole idea of destroy their patronage networks and put their leaders in jail is actually just sign my petition, ooh-woo. It comes with a video as well. Go on then, explain yourself.
Today, Restore Britain launches its first major campaign on the mass deportation of all those living in Britain illegally. Our research suggests that the total is likely over 2 million.
They've done research on this, where's that? I've just had a search through the Restore Britain account, and surely if there's over 2 million illegal migrants, they'd want to publish their findings everywhere. But the only stuff I'm finding is, well, a breakdown of the nationality of illegal migrants who've come over here. And our research appears to just be repackaging Home Office statistics. It's over 2 million sounds like a reasonable number, by the way. I'm not complaining about that, but if you're saying our research suggests this, you need to publish a research. I can't find it anywhere.
None of these people, men, women, or children, have any right to be in Britain. They must be identified, detained, and deported.
Right, okay, so you are just supporting the Reform position, Reform policy then? Is that what's happening here? Oh, Reform only want to get rid of 600,000. They're being realistic. Detaining and deporting people who are crossing the channel, easy, you know who they are. People who are already lost in the system, yeah, you actually have to find them first. Even the Trump administration's not quite reaching its target for deportation, so I'm glad to see Reform are being quite realistic on this.
As part of our campaign, we will be releasing a series of research reports into the scale of illegal migration to the United Kingdom, culminating in a full policy paper on the legal obstacles to and logistics of mass deportations.
Oh, Reform have already done that. Yeah, you don't need to do this. Reform have pretty much already done that. Leave the ECHR, leave the Human Rights Act, completely reform the Human Rights Act to a British Bill of Rights, let's be correct there. Leave the UN Torture Convention and a bunch of other international conventions until, yes, British law is pinnacle in Britain and we can actually just deport people with very few legal obstacles in the way, if any. One theme of this video is going to certainly be The Overton window's already shifted. I don't think you're moving it much further right. We are now in a place where all that really matters is actually getting power and kicking out the old guard of Labour and the Tories. People who accept they're dead and things have moved on, they're more than welcome to the political movement of reform. Those that can't accept that or are trying a different secret fourth thing, they're welcome to do that as well, but it's not going to get you very far, and that is very much the camp that Restore Britain is in.
We will also be delivering a campaign of public education, using every means at our disposal to inform the British public of the extent to which our leaders are systematically failing to uphold the most basic duty of government, which is the defence of the realm.
Okay, I'm sorry, have you missed the whole raising the colours thing? Have you missed all the protests happening outside of hotels? The public are pretty much already educated on that stuff. They know the government are not working in their favour. That's why Reform are 30-odd% in the polls consistently. We're kind of beyond the point of having to educate and think. We're at a point of actual action. This is why I'm doing an awful lot for Reform in terms of on the ground, knocking on doors, handing out leaflets, data collecting for houses so we know who are going to vote for us and who isn't, so that on the day of the election we go around knocking on doors to say, are you going to vote for us? Have you voted for us? There's a whole machine of action here that is done by foot soldiers, and you are infinitely more useful than anyone in Restore simply by doing that for Reform. Bear in mind, by the way, it costs 25 quid to join Restore. Imagine joining Restore UK just to have free petitions made, and to basically repackage research that's already been done by other think tanks, frankly, who've done better analysis on it. That's all Restore are, by the way, and I'm going to make that point to death in this video.
And we need your help. Today, we've launched a parliamentary petition calling for the offshore detention and mass deportation of all illegal migrants. Please sign it and share it far and wide.
Sorry, but are you kidding me here? Just to do this point to death. Something I actually missed out before. When he was talking about policy for mass deportation, Rupert Lowe's already done that. He did an 11-page document with the Centre for Migration Control. This, by the way, was before he made Restore Britain, where effectively, yeah, they do have a full policy plan for how to deliver mass deportations. Did anyone care about it? No. That's why they can get away with pretending that this is the first thing that they're doing. When Reform do it, however, everyone cares and everyone starts talking about mass deportation seriously. I think this should give you an indication as to who is really controlling the narrative here and who is actually pushing the boundaries. It's not Rupert Lowe, it's not Restore, it is Reform. If you're giving 25 quid to anyone, give it to Reform. Anyway, on top of that, we've literally already had a petition like this before. This petition had a deadline for 1st of October of this year. It was set up in April, it got just under 250,000 signatures, and all that was replied to it was the government are working on this to deport illegal migrants who are housed in hotels, and pretty much the same thing is put in the petition by Restore. The only difference is that they suggest to put the migrants offshore to process them. That's actually less radical than what Reform want, which is anyone who has come over on a boat is being deported. When you have offshore processing, you are inferring that actually some of them might be able to stay. I just want to point that out. I know that's not what they want, but they haven't worded it correctly for what they actually want. And the same thing's going to happen here. Oh, we're going to force a debate in the House of Parliament about this, is their main point of call. I want you to bear in mind that's literally already happened. They are already having a debate on this on the 20th of October, in about a month's time. The main thing they want from this, already happening. Because they didn't do research, and all Restore Britain really exists to do is to look like they are busy. This is their first major campaign. Some other random guy already managed it for them. You're giving £25 to this organisation. I used to say, oh, I don't really mind, some useful stuff could come out of it. No, at this point, I'm afraid you waste your money. Don't be embarrassed about it. We all waste money on stupid stuff. But in the future, I would recommend the 25 quid go toward Reform, because they're actually going to change things.
We must show our wretched government the intensity of anger that exists in this country around this issue.
Yeah, that's already been done. That's not just been done by the other petition. That's been done by the fact that there is a protest every weekend, I should say, outside a bunch of hotels. That's been shown by the Raise the Colours. That was even shown by Tommy Robinson with his rally, which if you actually listen to Vox Pops and listen to people that were there, barely anyone was there for Tommy Robinson. People were there to show patriotism and to show they're fed up with illegal migrants.
We can hope and pray for the ascendance of a patriotic government in 2029, but we cannot afford to sit idly by while the fabric of our country is deliberately torn apart.
Well, I mean, Charlie, you are a Reform member, though at this point I wouldn't be shocked if you're actually blacklisted from representing them in any way, or going to their meetings, to be quite honest with you. You can't join a literal enemy of Reform and expect to still be on side with them. But despite all that, you'd actually be infinitely more useful at actually doing the footwork and being a foot soldier for Reform than doing absolutely everything here with a major campaign that has literally already had some guy manage to get the outcome that you already wanted. Let's be real here, you've been shown up by a random dude. Okay, he got less signatures than you did. Who cares? It's still going to be debated in Parliament next month, which is what you want.
We must use every means at our disposal to exert pressure on our leaders and shift the discourse in this country in a more radical direction.
Yep, thanks Farage, thanks Reform, thanks Zia Youssef, thanks Richard Tice, thanks Lee Anderson, Sarah Poachin, and, well, now actually Danny Kruger. This, by the way, is why they are launching this major campaign, which is just a petition that, as I say, has had another one that's already managed to do what they wanted to do. It's because they want to try and drive attention away from the fact that Reform just got a sitting MP to join them, that sitting MP being Danny Kruger, who was one of the core MPs of small c conservatism within the Conservative Party. It was absolutely massive. People were stun-locked, effectively, politicians and journalists. And they have mixed feelings because they feel like this is the watershed moment. And how do Restore react to all this? Well, they don't say anything about it, and they effectively just say, we've got our own major campaign. Oh, look, 300,000 signatures. Well done, but I would expect that when this gets shared about by absolutely everyone. Honestly, all cannons were firing on this, and I find that quite embarrassing that this is what they deem the most important campaign.
We've already succeeded in doing this. The question now is not if Britain will be conducting mass deportations, but when.
Oh, from 2029 when Reform government get him. Yeah, I'm with you, that's completely inevitable, but ultimately, as I said in the other video that I suggested you watch, what Connor Tomlinson and Charlie Downs and a lot of the rest of the Zoomerwaffen and people, let's say, sceptical of Reform are effectively people that get all their attention and therefore, let's face it, their money and income by effectively always being outside the Overton window and only just, not to a point where they can get cancelled, of course, but to a point where they feel like they're going beyond Reform. Having said that, they've given away that actually they've not gone beyond Reform here, and now it just looks like a load of people who are Farage haters. That's what this looks like. And it's what this looks like because that's what this is.
The restoration of Britain will come in stages. After all, mass legal immigration is a far greater threat to Britain than illegal migration.
Totally agree. You would have been much more useful going on about that, but you went on about the illegal stuff that everyone's on the same page as. Get rid of them all. Hell, I think even like half of Green voters want rid of them.
But we must take things one step at a time, and that begins with the offshore detention and mass deportation of all illegal migrants.
Yeah, sure, everyone agrees with that. You know, random guy got 250,000 signatures for this. You're like 5 months late. And when I say they had all guns blazing on this, I'm not kidding. Obviously Rupert Lowe was sharing this because at the end of the day, he is the figurehead of this particular movement. I don't think he's not really doing much with it. Other people are running all this, including Charlie Downs and obviously Alistair Harrison, who also runs Rupert Lowe's social media. And, well, from insider information I have, is not particularly well liked, or certainly wasn't well liked in Reform. But on top of that, they had Carl, destroyer of every political movement he's a part of, Benjamin, pushing for the petition to be signed as well, which again I find really strange because the low seaters seem to actually have the correct opinion that, in the modern day sense anyway, petitions just don't do anything. You sign something, the government has to respond, and the government basically either responds no or we're totally doing something about this, don't worry. I'm kind of shocked that he actually went with this, but obviously he will have been asked by Mr. Lowe to do this, and I've been directly asked by Mr. Lowe's team. I have to do it, obviously. I have to show I'm on side. This, by the way, is why I'm calling this an unmitigated disaster, partially because Carl Benjamin's part of it and he destroys everything he touches politically. And on top of that, the major campaign they decided to get all guns blazing for, a petition that, as I want to keep emphasising, is a copy of another petition that already succeeded in the goals that they wanted from this petition. What is going on? They also got Black Belt Barrister to throw out a video on this. I'm not going to exhaust the list of people who covered this. I'm just going to go through the people with a large audience and, well, actual MPs as well who covered this, because obviously the Zoomerwaffen covered it. Harrison Pitt did a video on it. Lewis Brackpool, which he actually has his own section that I'm going to go on a tangent on, don't worry about that. Covered it as well. I just really need to make sure you understand this. This is the thing they decided to send out an email, obviously, to everyone with a big audience. Hey, can you do a quick video on this? We need to get this all over TikTok, Facebook, and wherever, because we want to show that we have popularity. Well, it's great if you have popularity, but at the end of the day, if you don't actually hold any political power, what's the point? Because, you know, the argument could be, oh, well, isn't Reform going to listen to them? Why would they? This was always pitched before it was launched as the alternative to Reform. That's exclusively how it was pitched as. Then they actually threw it out, realised Reform are doing really well, and had to backtrack on that. Ultimately, people are not going to forget all the tweets and even articles written by Lowe's ghostwriter about how he will come up with an alternative to Reform. And what happened was they launched Restore Britain, it got 300,000 followers in about a week, and then it just flatlined after that. Because ultimately, the only people that really join Restore Britain are people who are Farage and Reform disrespecters anyway. Turns out that's about 300,000 people. Turns out as well, that's going to be an awful lot of Americans, and I would not be shocked if a lot of people who signed this petition, not necessarily the majority, I'm talking maybe 1%, are actually Americans that are faking their addresses. Because when you sign this petition, all you have to do is tick a box saying, yes, I'm definitely a British citizen, here's my email address, and here's my address, and there's absolutely no way that anyone's actually checking if you're a real person beyond that. As I say, we definitely have a floor of 250,000 people signing this petition. They're on about 300,000 now. And obviously there's a big pull with Restore and Rupert Lowe on Twitter especially. But ultimately, what's that going to do? What happened with the last one? Wow, nothing. That's what's going to happen here. That's the embarrassing part of this. Everyone involved has the idea of, oh, we need political power and effectively need an autocracy with a Cromwell-like figure in charge. How do we do that? Oh, just send these petitions out. It's what they've got all guns blazing on. Again, I can't emphasise this point enough. This is stupid. You also had Tory MP John Lamont being pushed by Rupert Lowe as well. This is a Tory MP in Scotland who, to be fair to him, is quite based but is not taking the leap over to Reform. For all I know, he's one of the people that Reform have rejected, frankly because he's so much on the side of Lowe. And why would you want people that are actively on side with Reform agitators involved? This isn't actually necessarily to push the petition. I mean, as a peripheral it is. It is mainly, though, to push the fact of, oh, look, Rupert Lowe has Tory MPs on his side too. This is basically in reaction to the Danny Kruger thing. And again, yes, is pushing for the removal of illegal migrants, but it's an early day motion thing. Again, all cylinders out to try and say, oh, we need to get serious on illegal migration. Thing is, everyone already agrees with that. We're at a point where the Overton window has shifted. It's now time to get power. The problem is that an awful lot of these people are going to be nowhere near power because, frankly, Reform seem to know that these people are not actually particularly useful. If they were useful, they would not be seriously saying petitions help. Anyway, as mentioned before, Lewis Brackpool put out a little video saying, sign the petition, please. I'll just go through his tweets. Today marks an important moment for Restore Britain as we launch our first campaign on mass deportations. From recording this video to publishing it, our petition, tabled by Rupert Lowe, has grown from 50,000 to more than 93. As head of the Investigations and Whistleblowing Unit, we're going to get into that, I want to reach out to concerned members of the public and private sector, including those within government who may hold relevant information. If you have material that could help inform this campaign, please help us with our whistleblowing service. Every submission is treated seriously. So, what is the whistleblowing service? Well, Restore announced it with a little 5-minute video from Lewis Brackpool, and we are going to go through the main points of what it actually does. So it is apparently a whistleblower service and a way for FOI recommendations to be made. It's an FOI machine, by the way. Every single think tank is already an FOI machine. If you have leads to pursue, get in touch via FOIs and together we can deliver a real positive impact. An FOI machine is of quite limited use, especially given the fact that, as I say, every think tank is already an FOI machine, and you're obviously going to have diminishing returns with the more FOI machines you have. Bear in mind, a lot of what Restore actually publish is effectively repackaged statistics from either the Home Office or other think tanks that have sent out FOIs. And the problem you have with FOI machines is that effectively you end up costing these departments more money because Obviously, these departments are legally obligated to respond to FOIs, and if you effectively make a massive pile of FOIs, which they're getting from all sorts of think tanks as well, then yeah, you end up just costing more money anyway for, frankly, information that isn't even that useful. I've sent my own FOIs out before, and I have to say, I've never really had a useful return. What's the average salary from some DEI position in the NHS? Realistically, who cares? We shouldn't have them anyway. Originally, it was designed to make point of the arguments that, oh, look, it's costing this, that, or the other much. But realistically, when most of our public spending is redistributed wealth, a few $100,000 going to someone a year in the NHS for DEI, it's not actually that big an economic concern. That's much more a cultural problem. So that's part of the reason I've never made more than 2 or 3 FOIs, because, yeah, they're just pointless. Maybe pointless is a bit strong, but you'd be hard-pressed to actually send an FOI that gives you back any substantial useful information. For instance, their first public campaign with the whistleblower units was how much tax money is being spent by certain councils on removing our national flags. Who cares? They're removing the national flags, that's the problem. If it costs a tenner to remove a flag, who cares? Are you kidding me? Why was this the first thing you decided to post? I'm not, however, going to say it's all completely useless. Blackpool did send out a tweet with a few highlights of things that they are going to be investigating. Again, they're all under formal FOI investigations. It's an FOI machine, but not necessarily all of this is pointless. Safeguarding alerts, requests submitted on recorded incidents near schools involving individuals identified as migrants, asylum seekers, etc. We already know about that, it's in the news, not a particularly useful one. Muslim Brotherhood Home Office correspondence seeking internal-external communications from the past 2 years that explicitly reference the Muslim Brotherhood. That is useful. Deportation legal actions, full list of NGOs, law firms and charities that issue pre-action letters. We already know who they are. Pointless one. UK remittance overseas, accessing internal government reports from 2020 to 25 showing personal remittance overflow by countries where recorded. For those who don't know, personal remittance is personal transfers of compensation of employees. In other words, what money has gone from departments to employees abroad. Again, I don't see that one as particularly useful. There's plenty of people working for the British government abroad. I think the reason for that one is because they think it's to do with foreign aid. It might turn up something useful, to be fair, but I don't think it will. FOI data on how many right-to-buy sales were made to non-UK nationals. That's a good one. That is a good one. Again, they're not all completely useless, but realistically, this is stuff that can be done in anyone's free time, and you don't have to give them 25 quid a pop to do it. And hell, think tanks are doing this already. Unfortunately, with a lot of these useful ones, what typically happens is you end up with oh, we don't actually track this particular statistic, and then effectively all Restore can say is, oh, can you believe they don't track these statistics? Yeah, I can actually. I can believe they don't do it because I know they're incompetent. And that's about as far as it can go. And this is why they're always having to find something different to go toward. This is why they've thrown out a petition, because what else can they do? It's really what inspired me to make this video. They've had all these bright ideas of what they can do, realise that none of it's actually particularly useful or working. I mean, we've not even got into the rape gang inquiry yet, by the way. That is what I'm closing this video with. And now they've had to resort to petitions that, frankly, everyone who has been pushing it should know does not work, and yet they push it anyway. And we've not even made it to the Lotus Eaters directly pushing it on their channel yet. Again, your average normie who went to Runcorn to knock on doors and deliver leaflets has done more than pretty much everyone in Restore Britain combined. I know that might be shocking to a lot of you given how big their platform genuinely is, but getting Sarah Pacha elected has done way more to shift things rightward than anything Restore Britain has done so far. And if you want an example of what some of the FOIs that Restore Britain send out result in, it's stuff like this. Birmingham Library was ludicrously lit up with green and white to celebrate Pakistan's Independence Day. Yeah, that's the problem in and of itself. Oh, so we sent out an FOI to ask how much it cost, and it cost £1.87. I just wouldn't have posted that part. I would not have posted the part where it said, we did work to find out this FOI, but again, they just have to show they're doing stuff, even if it's embarrassing like this. Can you believe that some of your tax money, a whole £2, went on some lights? Yes, that's not the problem. The problem is that they even did it in the first place. I don't care how much it cost. And if you want to know the actual purpose of this petition, it's effectively to try and show, oh look, Restore has a load of influence. Look at the people that we can get to sign it. Loads of people in Carlisle and the North East, and of course, Great Yarmouth is a massive one. Again, Great Yarmouth will be massive for two reasons. One, Rupert Lowe will have an email list of his constituents that he will send this petition out to, and two, if anyone's going to fake their address, it's going to be in Great Yarmouth because that's where Rupert Lowe is MP. So that makes sense. And yeah, wow, did you know that mass deportations are popular? Yeah, that's probably why Reform are pushing it. And I know what the argument's going to be. The argument's going to be, oh, it's only because of Restore and Rupert Lowe pushing mass deportations that Reform are doing it now. No, again, the only thing that changed with Reform, with Operation Restoring Justice, is that they started saying mass deportations. They could have still pushed the same policy and not called it mass deportations, but they felt that was the right time. They weren't saying it in the past because you can't get away with it as much when you're 20% in the polls, something like that, and you're third. Once you're in a clear first place for 100 polls in a row, yeah, you can start kind of saying what you like. And mass deportations was in reason. Barely any of it had to actually do with Lowe and all of this saber rattling over on Twitter, and it is pretty much exclusively Twitter, I have to say. You go to Facebook, you go to TikTok, the support for Reform is a lot less split compared to the support on Twitter. Twitter is a really weird place, even in online circles. And Reform don't exclusively look at Twitter, so that's my reasoning for saying this is not Rupert Lowe's doing. Anyway, as mentioned before, obviously Tory MPs are being pushed on this point as well. Along with the petition was an early day motion for Parliament, which is effectively just MPs tabling a motion for debate, and it got 21 signatures. Most of these names are Tories. If they're not Tories, they're DUP members. Sitting Tories who basically have a leadership who are standing largely by their record. Even Chris Philp was basically standing by his record saying, oh, actually that bad stuff, that was a load of other people that had nothing to do with our party. Again, the reason that Tories that leave the Tory party and say they're dead are much more respectable than these people is because it's quite clear that the people leaving, Danny Kruger included, do not stand by that record. And that makes them infinitely better than this entire list of names of Tory MPs that Rupert Lowe's happy to have on side, because now he's been kicked out of Reform, he has to find support elsewhere, and that's within a party that is 80% wet. So well done, Rupert. You've alienated yourself to join a party that's dying. How do you feel? Again, by the way, this is all being pushed after Danny Kruger left. The main reason for this is to revive the Tory party and make them seem based. That is the point of Restore at the moment. That is something else I'm trying to layer on thick here. Because it's just so blatantly obvious. Why the timing of it now? Why do it just after Danny Kruger left and joined the Reform Party and said that the Tory party was dead? Because they want to revive it. It's obvious. Anyway, all guns were still blazing on this, and the PR faced Charlie Downs with his plucked eyebrows and skincare routine throughout another candid video saying why it's important. Effectively, it comes down to because we need to show the government they're not happy with illegal migration. Yeah, that's why Reform are 30-odd% in the polls. We know that. Why are you wasting your time on this? Anyway, the Lotus Eaters decided that they need an entire section pushing this petition as well. We'll go through the highlights of this. If I react to this video is going to end up about 10 hours long, and, well, I'm really trying to keep it under 2.
Because this is our battering ram, right? Restore Britain, which is entirely filled with genuine patriots, people like Rupert Lowe, people like Harrison Pitt, Lewis Brackpool, Charlie Downs, right? These are our guys.
So just to respond to that, sorry, Restore Britain is your battering ram for what? Who cites Restore Britain as being part of the battering ram in politics? Absolutely no one. There's no one. Sorry, I listen to an awful lot of Times Radio, Spectator, Daily Telegraph, centre-right publications, not the Times, they're centre-left. And I've never heard Restore Britain cited once. In fact, whenever they do talk about Rupert Lowe, it's Rupert Lowe the person. I'm not even sure they're aware it exists. No, whenever there's talk of mass deportations or crime or, hell, even demographics, Reform UK is pretty much always cited as, oh, what are they saying? What do they think? What policies are they going to put in place? Nobody cares about Restore Britain. What this comes down to is, all my friends are in Restore Britain and you should support it. That's what that meant. Anyway, let's see why the petition is going to be useful.
And they're doing absolutely wonderful work, whether it's in terms of Rupert's independent inquiry into the grooming gang.
Sorry, you mentioned that as well. Yeah, again, that's going. I'm saving all of that for the last section, but the rape gang inquiry, as far as I can tell, that has been the biggest disaster of all of this, and there's a reason I'm leaving it till last, because that's quite hard to talk about while effectively making fun, because that has seriously gone wrong.
what's more as well, a form of direct democracy in which we can basically vote on policy, on ideas, for what we want to see for the future of Britain.
Oh yeah, that was absolutely ridiculous as well. So their opening gambit for this sort of thing was, oh, we have big news. We did our first membership poll. Guess what? Everyone who paid £25 to Rupert Lowe's fund to run Restore Britain so that I can vote on things, pretty much everyone was in favour of illegal migrants being deported. Wow, really? Who would have thought? This is your direct democracy. Basically, people of Restore Britain saying, I should be voting Reform, but instead I'm going to look for any alternative because I hate Nigel Farage. That's pretty much it. This, again, was embarrassing, took money that was wasted. It was better off being sent straight to Reform. I mean that sincerely.
Though I have to question who those 0.5% are and what they were trying to do with Restore Britain if they're not on form with that, which is...
This is the other really funny thing about the whole Restore Britain thing. Not only can foreigners join Restore Britain, by the way, they don't actually check that. There are foreigners in Restore Britain. I know there are. So part of the 0.5% could be agitators from there, but also they constantly say, oh, you know, the Green Party members can join Restore Britain. We're for everyone. Because they've realised going against Reform directly is not a good idea. Even Tommy Robinson realised that, and he banned his speakers from having a go at Reform. So if you're apparently open to some leftists and you are trying to make your membership representative of Britain, yeah, you're going to have some people going against it, but no, in fact, it was always going to be an echo chamber of people on the right who are Farage disrespecters, and yeah, that's an obvious result of this. Everyone already knew this. What are you actually adding? Out of all of this, I can't actually cite anything that Restore have actually added to the conversation. Anyway, let's go to the petition, and why Luca here believes that it is vitally important for you to sign it. Anyway, Luca's very happy with the fact that they've managed to get 250,000 signatures within 24 hours, and says this.
And we can do this every single time there is a petition. And not just do it every single time, but do it for something that will make a practical difference. Once we show them that this is the appetite and this is where the trajectory of the country wants to be.
Sorry, but again, just total nonsense. As I said before, there's already been a petition like this that succeeded. Doing another one, what's that going to change? Nothing. Obviously. I don't know, why are the Lotus of all people who are on board with elite theory, on board with AA's claptrap of, oh, what the people think doesn't really matter. It's all about removing and replacing elites and things like that. Why are they trying to tell their audience that petitions matter? Government petitions are literally there as a release valve. That's what they're there for. I haven't signed one in about 5 years. And just because you're getting hundreds of thousands of people signing it in a few minutes, I mean, plenty of leftist institutions tried this for a few years as well. Hell, we had nearly 1 million people sign a petition to say general election now about 3 months into Starmer's government. It didn't change anything. What has changed things is protests outside of Epping hotels. Why that's happened is because it's real people, not just on the internet, but real people going to these places, actually protesting it, and they're doing it consistently. Same thing with Extinction Rebellion, though, so obviously that was much bigger. Same thing with Just Stop Oil, though they were actually breaking the law. Protests can work. Petitions in this day and age can't really. Having said that, we did end slavery because it all started off with a petition that was about 2 miles long being sent to Parliament to end it. But I'm just gobsmacked that the Lotus Eaters are trying to tell people, listen, what really matters is you signing a petition. They would not say this under any other circumstance. They would never say it under any other circumstance.
It not only signals to Labour, who won't do anything about it, but it will also send signals to Reform as well that they are behind the curve.
Sorry, what do you mean they're behind the curve? They've already done Operation Restoring Justice. They've already said that everyone's going to be deported. Fine, they're not going to get everyone in the first 5 years. Boo-hoo. What they are going to do is completely reform the legal framework so that it's actually possible to do this. Honestly, is there something in the water over in Swindon? What is wrong with the Lotus Eaters? They've all caught a really weird strain of Farage derangement syndrome where they're pretending that Nigel Farage, for some reason, and the Reform Party aren't taking illegal migration seriously, when in reality, they're driving the conversation on it.
I also wanted to just point out as well that this can be the future.
Oh, I'll raise you one better. This will be the future, but Rupert Lowe won't be involved in it. He won't be involved in it at all. He shot himself in the foot really early. And if I was him, I'd be really embarrassed about that, but he's not. And I think that's because he's basically surrounded himself with more yes men than everyone accuses Nigel Farage of. Rupert Lowe quite clearly has been the face of all these things. I don't think he really does much actual tangible work on it. I think he's doing the right thing as an MP and doing constituency work. Rupert Lowe's a very good constituency MP. I'm never going to take that away from him, but all these other things he's doing, effectively he's one of the PR faces of it. Everyone calling the shots is the rest of his team, and I think especially Alistair Harrison. Because Alistair Harrison, quite clearly, as we read in the KC report, and is the person who runs his social media account, is a bit of an idiot. And that's why I think all these barrels have been pointed at this petition. Even though it's completely pointless, everyone promoting it knows it's pointless. It's because ultimately Alistair Harrison seems to call an awful lot of shots for Rupert's team, and by extension everyone around him, including in Restore Britain, the rape gang inquiry. And, well, frankly, Reform UK were right to get rid of Rupert Lowe because he was not getting rid of Alistair Harrison, who quite clearly is a moron.
Right? And anyone who tells you otherwise is a doomer, right? Mass deportations must become inevitable. They are inevitable.
This is a thing Homeland do as well. I never particularly get this tactic of saying, oh, X, Y, or Z is inevitable. This is exactly what Corbynistas did back in 2017 to 2019, and they ended up flat on their face. It was an embarrassment when they did it. It's an embarrassment when Low Seats and everyone around them do it. You can't just say X, Y, or Z is inevitable. You need to persuade people. Luckily, you don't really need to do that with mass deportations. They're incredibly popular, if all they mean is deporting all illegals and criminals. But this is the problem. It was the most obvious Mott and Bailey in the world, but Reform got to a point where they command the Overton window and then can just say it. Politics is all about timing, and literally everything I'm seeing from Rupert Lowe in Restore Britain so far is, frankly, well, it's behind the curve, which is just incredible, because they keep saying they're ahead of it. They may have been ahead of the curve when they were saying mass deportations 6 months ago, fine, like, I'll accept that, but that's literally all they had. If you're going on about mass deportations post-reform, going on about it with Operation Restoring Justice, yeah, you're not thinking dynamically. You're a one-trick pony, and all of that oxygen is being taken up by Reform UK. And amazingly, they've done that without even paying any attention to you. I just want to let you know that. Anyway.
We finally have the means to push our agenda with an organised minority into the halls of Westminster, whether they wish to have the conversation or not.
Again, some random dude managed to get 250,000 signatures, or just under that, and they are going to have the debate anyway. Again, they have Reform MPs in there, they have Rupert Lowe in there. They ask these questions as well, they have these debates. What happens? It just gets shut down and nothing's actually talked about. Please learn that the way Parliament works these days is largely useless because of the post-Blair revolution. Please learn that it is going to be Reform and nobody else who reverses that.
And what's more as well, we have to still remember that Restore Britain as a movement is still in its infancy, right? More and more petitions will be put forward, and I'm sure many of them have an even more radical persuasion than the mass deportation of all the illegals.
I'm going to leave the reaction to Luca there because this kind of says everything. Yes, they are still in its infancy, and that's why, realistically, you can't be that hard on them. I'm being incredibly hard on them because of how basically smug they're acting about this petition of all things. But, you know, when the plan seems to be, oh yeah, there's definitely going to be more petitions, that'll be great. Oh, we'll just become another FOI machine. The question just has to be asked, what's the point? Centre for Migration Control already does this focusing on immigration. Taxpayers Alliance already does this based on FOIs with taxpayers wasting money. All this is already done by a lot of other people who, frankly, do better analysis on the whole damn thing, which makes sense because, yeah, they're not in their infancy. They're established think tanks that have happened for ages. The only thing that I think can save Restore Britain here is bearing in mind that the Fabian Society is effectively a think tank. I don't think it's called the Fabian Think Tank or anything like that, but it has like 10,000 members, if that. And, you know, they're a front for publishing research and things like that, but realistically they have contacts with the Labour Party and I'm sure other parties to try and push a socialist agenda within them and, yes, help them out make policy. The thing is, you need connections with parties to do that. Restore Britain, they've kind of screwed up with trying to join the Reform Party because Rupert Lowe kept saying it's an alternative to them. Okay, what are you going to do then? Well, the only thing they can do is join the Tories. This is why it's a Tory revival plan, because the only way they actually do anything useful is, as they are already involved with the Tories, revive them. and make them seem based. But the Tories are such a tainted brand that's never going to happen. They're going to die before anything like that happens. So effectively, yeah, again, at this point, you've wasted money if you've given Restore £25. My advice, don't do that again. Just give it to Reform. They're the ones who are actually going to get the levers of power, and frankly, if your only issue was, oh, they don't go on about mass deportations, well, that's not true anymore. So give your head a wobble. Anyway, moving on from the useless stuff that Restore Britain is doing, we now have Rupert Lowe's other major project, which is the rape gang inquiry. I'm going to front load this by saying it's not been completely useless. They have been collecting data and evidence, that's already public by the way, and have put it together to have a full list of areas in the United Kingdom where rape gangs have operated. Now, this is on the local authority level, not the town level, so it involves the county councils and obviously the police force involved. And obviously they say hundreds of brave survivors, family members and whistleblowers have approached the rape gang inquiry since launch with unique stories. However, patterns of targeted exploitation by predominantly Pakistani males combined with gross negligence from public bodies are identifiable. Further research following the submission of thousands of Freedom of Information requests by our data investigation team has enabled the rape gang inquiry to produce one of the most comprehensive exposés of a nationwide scandal to date. And it's basically a location of where they've happened. Fine. There's some use in that, but ultimately, again, as was said by Nigel Farage after they backpedaled on launching an inquiry, because they were basically advised that, yeah, this is basically all you can do. You can only get public information, FOI requests, and basically tell people where it happened. You can't compel people to give witness testimonies. You basically can't do anything useful to get anyone actually in jail. This is about as far as it can go, which would be fine if it didn't come with an awful lot of sacrifice, and also wasn't so blatantly used effectively as a battering stick for people who don't want to associate with it because of the bad stuff we're going to go through. So the rape gang inquiry is pretty much run by, well, who calls the shots as Rupert's team? That's pretty obvious. But the main caseworker for the rape gang inquiry is Sammy Woodhouse, who herself is a rape gang survivor. And she made it clear back in August that they were at the evidence submission stage, and they are beyond the point of taking any more evidence for them to collect and go through. And most of it's basically witness statements from survivors. And one of the main accusers of this is Donna Rachel, who back in June posted back in London for the day for a meeting of the rape gang inquiry panel. The British people deserve to know the truth of how our children were betrayed for so long, and very soon they will. Keep the testimonies coming, every one is being read, and your voice is being heard. Submit evidence here. So she was fully on board with the rape gang inquiry and was even on the board of volunteers helping out with it. All very good. Anyway, fast forward to mid-August, and people on the Rape Gang Inquiry Board, obviously headed by Rupert Lowe, have written to, I believe it was the Home Secretary, effectively asking why we're not hearing updates about the National Grooming Gang Inquiry that was promised by Jess Phillips not too long ago. And as you can see, there are a number of names attached to this, including Rupert Lowe, Esther McVeigh, James McMurdoch, and of course Sammy Woodhouse. And this is what Donna Rachel had to say about this. Looks like I've been dropped from the Rape Gang Inquiry panel without anyone telling me, and I'm not surprised. The whole truth is that this is a shambles. We've had one meeting of the panel so far, attended by myself, Sammy, Lowe and McVeigh. It was clear that Lowe's team had no idea what they were doing. Surprise, surprise. I've not noticed that Lowe's team are useless. They've dumped the whole thing on Sammy, wanting her to record videos with survivors. When she and others pointed out that they had to be done carefully to avoid re-traumatising the survivors, one of his aides responded, why, just grab an iPhone and film them. This is the attitude of Lowe's team. They don't really care about doing things properly, they just want excuses to chud out. You cannot do things like the Rape Gang Inquiry like this. You cannot have people with this mentality, because ultimately you have very vulnerable women where if you do this wrong, they get re-traumatised and have a whole load of mental health issues dumped on top of them yet again that they frankly don't deserve. I met with Sammy a couple of days later. She was having to manage the whole data collection process pretty much single-handedly, and to her credit she did insist on bringing a competent person, a friend who she trusted, but had to fight Lowe's team to get this person on the books. Now, there's a reason for this. They only have £600,000. That is absolutely nothing when you are making a panel like this. That can be burned through in a week, especially if you have KCs on board, which they don't. And this was the reason Reform backpedaled on it partly as well, because they can't afford it. it's basically impossible to afford. So Rupert Lowe, again, his team, chud out. Oh, Reform aren't doing it, we'll do it, that'll get us in the news. Yeah, it looks like it will for the wrong reasons, but people aren't really focusing on this because, again, not many people really know it's going on. And when it does come up on mainstream media in any way, people are very cynical about it. Think about the Emily Maitlis interview, which, yes, Emily Maitlis was an idiot on that interview, but Lowe isn't very good at answering questions either. So following the meeting, I spent 2 weeks putting together a proposal for the team to outsource the work to Archive for Truth. And full disclosure here, Donna is on the board of the Survivors Archive, and so obviously will make money from this if they get paid. We have a team of experienced people already working on ethics and safeguarding policies for gathering testimonies, and I explained that we can make sure the work was done ethically with a methodology that would ensure robust results. Lowe and his team could get on with the day job of politics and take all the credit at the end. So win-win, but my team, not unreasonably given how much time it would take, would need to be paid. Didn't give a figure, hoping that there could be an adult conversation, and the answer I got back was a laughable, we're happy for you to do all the work, but we're not paying you. Again, largely because they don't have the money for that. These things are expensive. Reform UK were absolutely right to backpedal on this because all they can do is judicial reviews that they have KCs on board with to volunteer. Quite hard to do with a rape gang inquiry given the scale of it, but you can do individual judicial reviews, which, to be fair, I don't think they've managed either, probably because that's turned out to be more difficult. And really, the only way to actually get this justice served to these rape gangers is to actually have the levers of power. That's where Reform are way ahead of Rupert Lowe and Restore and the rape gang inquiry. So that was the last communication that she had from any of them, and from what I understand, the inquiry is still shambolic, but as I say, no one's talked to me, and now I know why. This is precisely why the Archive for Truth exists. The politicians and media are all very concerned with generating headlines, but no thought is given to the humans at the heart of this, the survivors. It is they who matter in all of this, and it is for them and them only that the work should be done. And with the archive, it will be. Ethically, responsibly, with the survivors' well-being at the heart of everything we do, you have my word. Now, Donna was asked a few questions under this particular post, so I'll quickly go through a couple of the important ones. So why wasn't a proper legal team engaged, and where has the 600,000 raised gone? Donna doesn't know the answer to either of these questions. She was given no information whatsoever. She was brought along to the board, asked for help, said, well, if you want help, you're going to need to pay us for it because, frankly, we've got bills to pay and this is a full-time job. And they were basically told to get stuffed because they can't afford it. And this stuff has to be done properly. So they're doing the best with what they can, but it turns out that, well, it's not particularly getting them very far and it's not particularly being useful. You've got to remember, when this rape gang inquiry was raising money, they said, we'll get everyone together, compile a full list of people we've asked for witness statements, live stream the whole damn thing, and then put out all the information we have on people who say didn't give witness testimonies, which will be most of them. And, well, it turns out that, well, when you interview survivors, you need to be really, really careful. And it just sounds like they haven't been and do not have the money to do it. Which is why Reform avoided this, because this is a scandal. There's also a critical question saying what you've written may or may not be true, but it's also consistent with you just deciding to trash the inquiry because they wouldn't fund you. Not sure this was the right way to air grievances. To which Donna says, true, and believe me, there's a lot more I could have said. I've also been holding off on saying anything until now because I hoped at some point there would be another meeting and we could have a reasonable discussion, but no, they just want headlines. And of course I'll try and spin it like I just wanted money, but I'm not the only one who has pointed out that they are half-arsing it. The girls deserve so much better. That much is true, and let's go through some examples. Lorraine Reed had her own testimony. I'm not surprised, in reply to Donna. As a whistleblower, I raised concerns about child sexual exploitation in Oxfordshire. My 13-year-old daughter was sexually abused. A number of girls in her school were also sexually abused. I wonder if it's because it is in the Cotswolds, if it had some bearing. I read the initial promise of the inquiry, and it promises to protect and support whistleblowers. Lowe ignored 3 emails I sent, a letter I sent to the House of Commons. It was only when I hand-delivered a letter to his office that I got a reaction, but it wasn't from him. It has become apparent that the only agenda of the inquiry is Pakistani perpetrators. This completely ignores all the victims of doctors, teachers, police officers, youth workers, churches. That's not what was promised. I worked with a number of vulnerable children who died, and Oxfordshire County Council and Thames Valley Police lied to cover up the failures. I experienced an asylum seeker who had been assessed to be 23 to 25, put into a children's home with no safety measures to protect staff or children, and I ended up with a knife in my chest as a result. And yeah, as mentioned, the rape gang inquiry was apparently hard to get through to. We used to have a known convicted sex offender who visited the children's home and parked in the car park. I've experienced for myself the level of corruption from police, child services, even churches, good God, who are all complicit and culpable for attempting to pervert the course of justice by projecting blame onto me because I whistleblew. This isn't an inquiry into the rape and sexual abuse of children, it's a political campaign to tackle migration by creating an inquiry that only focuses on one demographic of perpetrators. Sammy Woodhouse laughed at me and made it very clear what the focus of the inquiry was. I'm shocked but not surprised. I'm sorry you found out as you did, but I imagine how many thousands of victims who were raped by white rapists are feeling. And there's even more to go through, with examples of other people who have been victims of these awful crimes. She finishes off by saying, it saddens me to see when the inquiry that promised so much has changed its agenda. And now we'll move on to the third example, testimony against the rape gang inquiry from Corrine. We are a group of survivors who have engaged with Rupert Lowe's rape gang inquiry and are speaking out publicly because the inquiry is re-traumatising instead of helping us. The key concerns are there's no therapy or safeguarding that has been offered to survivors despite repeated promises. Survivors were re-traumatised by finding the location excluded from the list that was recently made public despite giving evidence to the inquiry about their abuse, and it feels like they're being silenced again. When survivors raised concerns about safeguarding issues, they were told that they may be unsuitable to take part in the inquiry due to their mental health status. Not only is this a form of discrimination, it's also contrary to the spirit of the inquiry. Survivors do suffer ongoing mental health trauma, and this should be factored into the evidence-giving process and proper support put in place to help survivors manage any impact upon their mental health. Instead, we were excluded. The evidence gathered by the inquiry has been entirely handled by Sammy Woodhouse, who herself is a survivor, apparently with the help of only one other person, and this is itself a safeguarding issue. When a survivor turned it to social media to make their concerns heard, inquiry staff blocked and silenced them. Blocked accounts include myself, Lorene, and a locked account called Liz. In addition, Donna Rachel, founder of Archive for Truth, an organisation dedicated to helping survivors share their story and access support, was blocked for raising similar concerns. So this is apparently what's happening with the rape gang inquiry. Whenever they're getting criticism, very major criticism of re-traumatising people and not safeguarding properly, which, out of everyone, survivors of these heinous crimes deserve, and even I believe by law, have to be safeguarded. Instead, they're just ducking responsibility. And honestly, I don't blame them, because realistically, what else can they do? They don't have the money to deal with this. It seems to be all run, one, by amateurs, two, by a team that in no way is equipped for this. This was always going to be a disaster. And now you've got a load of people coming out trying to say this is a disaster. And who cares? Not many people, because nobody really knows that the rape gang inquiry is going on, apart from a few backbench and independent MPs. None of this stuff is going to be covered by people on the Rupert Lowe side, and so unfortunately, basically, it's down to me to help, signal boost this. There's a separate testimony from an awful lot of different survivors who will pretty much have the same story. Now, sure, this could all be coordinated to take down Rupert Lowe, but I think that's quite unlikely, given that Donna, who is head of Archive for Truth, or founder of it, is a reform disrespecter. She doesn't like reform, so it's not a political attack in that sense. I have full trust that what they are saying is largely accurate, and I think this is the sort of thing that should be shared around a bit more, but again, nobody's really talking about it, because on the right, you criticise Rupert Lowe, it's uncouth. Well, I'm sorry, there's no excuse for this. The rape gang inquiry has been a complete mess. It needs to be addressed. They frankly, from the looks of it, need to put a complete stop to it until they can actually afford the professionals that they need to actually safeguard people that they are going to be at risk of re-traumatising as they ask them about what happened. Because believe it or not, it's not particularly easy for people who have been the victims of these horrific acts to talk about them. You can't just put a camera in front of them and hope they talk and nothing bad happens. That's ridiculous. It just shows the absolute contempt actually shown towards these women. And I do mean that. These were women, by the way, as some of them were on GB News with Charlie Peters. And again, this seems like something that they're not touching either. Now, maybe they're in the process of investigating it, to be fair to them, I don't know. But as I say, I've never seen this particular issue brought up anywhere apart from these women's Twitter accounts. And so at this point, I feel almost an obligation to signal boost this. So let's carry on with that. Do people not understand that we need real support? Why does it feel like no one truly cares about our well-being? Many of us have been forced to relocate, torn from our homes and communities for safety, but with no real support in place to help us rebuild. Now we live in the very aftermath of our trauma, day in, day out. The inquiry was meant to bring justice, but instead it has taken us right back to the edge, where we were made to relive what we barely survived. A process that has in some brought about suicidal thoughts, but when we asked for help in dealing with that, we were silenced all over again. We call upon Rupert Lowe to explain why his inquiry is not safeguarding the very people it's supposed to be protecting. What's the purpose of the inquiry? Why was proper safeguarding practice not put in place right from the start? How is our data being managed, and is it being properly protected? How is the money raised for this inquiry being spent? And most of all, will he please offer a sincere apology for re-traumatising us in this manner? Has any of that happened? No. And Corinne here has actually brought along receipts, with evidence that Sammy Woodhouse has indeed blocked Corinne herself, has blocked the Survivors Archive, which literally all they did was ask, can you pay us for our professional help, by the way? And Donna Rachel, who heads the same organisation. And by the way, Donna herself has said, oh, it doesn't necessarily have to be us, but can you please just have some sort of safeguarding, please? And finally, Liz has shown evidence that she is blocked too. In fact, she was blocked not long after trying to get in contact with Sammy about what she's doing and why it's wrong. This is just completely avoiding responsibility, and, well, that's also proved on Twitter itself. Donna replied to a clarifying tweet from Sammy, who said that they're still waiting on evidence so that we can name other places. Many of the places are still being added to the list, which obviously we saw at the beginning. And Donna replies to this saying, Sammy, you and Enderbury, not sure who that is, know that this isn't good enough. Lorraine, is in floods of tears, feeling completely hopeless today because of the way it has been handled. You have to stand up to Rupert's team and tell them they have to have proper safeguards. If you knew that not all the names were on the list, you should have contacted survivors whose areas are not on the list and explain why beforehand, and not just leave them to find out on X. But again, you can't do that when you're the only person running the damn thing. It's way too stressful. It's completely understandable. Again, this is on Rupert's team. I don't blame Sammy for an awful lot of this. She's been put in a dire situation with basically no support. But we know why that didn't happen, because it's just the two of you running the whole thing unsupported. We were all at the meeting. You asked Rupert what would happen if we needed more money to do it properly, and the reply was, we can always get more money. So why is he now using lack of money as an excuse not to do the job properly? The inquiry needs to be done by trained researchers who have a track record of collecting evidence of traumatised people, and the survivors need support from trained therapists who can support them through this extremely traumatic process. I would suggest that they could also do this with fair legal counsel to help them find out what their rights are. Those people cost money. If what has been raised isn't enough, and we know it isn't, then Lowe needs to be true to his own word and raise more money and not just brush it off as more trouble. It's completely irresponsible to conduct the inquiry without proper safeguards in place, and you both know it. The headlines Rupert will gain from the inquiry are not worth the cost, in terms of human suffering, of doing it badly. And she got blocked not long after that, bear in mind. That is the mindset of Rupert's team and those running the entire inquiry. Someone points out you are completely screwing up the inquiry, just block them. Despite the fact this has come from multiple different survivors, all pretty much saying the same thing. That either means that yes, this is a consistent screw up within the inquiry, or they're coordinating to attack it. To what ends would they be coordinating to attack it, though? I have absolutely no idea what they gain from it, because as I say, they've got no publicity from it, they've made no money from it. What was the point? Well, that is a question that can also be pushed onto Rupert and the Rape Gang inquiry itself, because, well, it seems to all be publicity for MPs and other politicians that want to raise their profile. Susan Hall was there at the Rape Gang inquiry, along with Tory MP Andrew Rochendale, who both attended the event in Parliament yesterday, meeting with survivors from London. Sadiq Khan refused to answer questions on the rape gang in the capital, and this is unacceptable. This is what it's used. It's used as a beating stick for people who are not involved, and obviously Sadiq Khan's the example there. John Lamont, as mentioned before, said earlier this year, I met with Dr. Joanne Kerr, a brave survivor of child sexual exploitation and abuse, at Rupert Lowe's meeting at the Rape Gang inquiry. Listen to Jonah, as this is why we need an inquiry. And you're free to listen to that, and I completely agree there does need to be an inquiry, but it needs to be run by the people at the very top. One, because they have the money and resources, and two, because they actually have law on their side to compel people to commit to witness testimony who actually matter. You can't compel people without the law behind you. But to make it clear, it's all publicity. They've unfortunately used a lot of these women, re-traumatised them in some cases, had poor safeguarding, and basically it looks like they have taken advantage of them for their own political ends. That is atrocious and indefensible, And the fact that the initial reaction is to just block all these people, for Sammy Woodhouse to do that, goes to show that this is generally the reaction to all this. We've got our publicity, just block the people causing trouble. That's the best we can do. It's depressing, it is. And I've seen barely any evidence to say that actually it has been useful, these women have been protected, and that actually the money is enough and being well spent to protect these women and safeguard them. I've seen no evidence for that, and I'm open to seeing evidence for that, but the blocking doesn't exactly give high hopes. I think the most embarrassing part of all this is, I've been through this before, but the whole Gavin Williamson joining the board thing, he was at the rape gang inquiry as well. He was a literal minister. It was for education and defence, I believe, but he was in cabinet, he had influence in the cabinet, at the very top of government, and did nothing to try and get an actual inquiry through. He sat on it along with everyone else in the Tory party for years. As I say, this is all a Tory revival plan. This is all for good publicity. And finally, it's to use as a beating stick against reform. Rupert Lowe. I sat next to Farage in the Commons when he stated that reform would raise the money for a rape gang inquiry, and I applauded him. And for that I am sorry. Nothing happened, nothing was done, reform did nothing. It's filthy politics, and I feel deeply ashamed of my role in it. Well, if all these witness testimonies are largely accurate, you should be much more embarrassed about the way you've been letting your team run the rape gang inquiry. You should be embarrassed that Sammy Woodhouse has thought it appropriate to block people raising serious concerns about safeguarding, and you should be embarrassed that the most useful thing that's come out of this inquiry so far is a map of where they've happened. This stuff was supposed to be live streamed, this stuff was supposed to be completely and utterly open, practically open source so that people could actually look into this and see how it was going, and so far it's basically all just been publicity stunts. And then you get self-congratulatory tweets like this. Today our rape gang inquiry brought over 60 survivors and whistleblowers to Westminster. He's very proud of it all. He's happy to say that a couple of Labour and Plaid MPs were there along with a number of Conservatives, and then calls out the Lib Dems, Reform, Green and SNP MPs for not turning up at all and having absolutely no representation there. Rupert Lowe, his team at least, have positioned himself as the man attached to the rape gang inquiry and taking all this stuff seriously. It's quite a ridiculous thing to do, and he set himself up to be hoisted by his own petard by then having, well, the rape gang inquiry appear to not be doing its own job very well. And so far, admittedly, there's an awful lot of data to get through, sure, but it's just to map out where there is evidence that this sort of thing has happened. Could this be useful in the future? Sure. Is it worth traumatising these women over and not doing it properly and professionally and safeguarding them from suicidal thoughts potentially? No. We know these have happened all over Britain. We know they're happening in places that have not been largely reported on before. We need a full-on national government-led inquiry, and we know that's not happening until, at the very least, Reform are in charge. I've no doubt there were good intentions all around this rape gang inquiry, but unfortunately the road to hell is paved with those sorts of things. When you have amateurs running the damn thing, when you are completely underfunded, and when you are frankly dealing with the most vulnerable people you can imagine, yeah, it's a recipe for disaster. And I would imagine at some point in the future it's going to be investigated and they are going to have an awful lot to answer for. And hell, they may have all the answers and I may have to eat my words. I'm completely open to that possibility. But when this number of survivors are coming out, when the initial reaction to this sort of thing is to just block these people, it's not looking good. So I suppose I should give you an overall conclusion. Restore has been an unmitigated disaster. Anything useful that does come out, it's quite mediocre, low-level information that isn't particularly useful to the topics at hand. All their large campaigns say mass deportations, all the oxygen's being swallowed up by Reform. Whenever Reform have a major win, such as Danny Kruger moving over, that's when they decide all barrels need to go back to mass deportation for some reason, despite the fact that, yes, everyone pretty much agrees with that, and yes, Reform are going to win largely on that ticket. On top of that, they've tried to say we'll be a whistleblower unit. That's turned out to be an FOI machine, which makes them pretty much like every other think tank. The whole thing's run by people saying, effectively, you need to learn to fight, there's a civil war coming, they're rubbing their hands together for some sort of political violence that, frankly, I don't think any of them are going to be involved with. They are armchair tacticians, and I think if the country would start to break apart, I frankly think they would be the type who don't last very long anyway. And if they do, it's because they go straight into hiding. These are people I basically have no respect for. These are people who are frankly losers. They are people who have absolutely no talents outside of commentating about what is going on with current events. I made this channel as a hobby to do that. because I do useful things with the rest of my time. These people have made it their job, and because they've made it their job, they have to find any way to up their profile. That is why they were desperate to get on Restore Britain in any way they could, either as an advisor, the PR manager, managing a section that effectively is just let me send off emails to the public sector, and it's all fairly useless. Now that's all stuff we can make fun of, but the rape gang inquiry stuff, the failure to safeguard, the accusations that they've re-traumatised people that they've been interviewing, the completely flippant remarks by Rupert Lowe's team, that is an unmitigated disaster, and I think it's something that should be investigated by people who have way more access to this stuff than I do. I just want to sound the alarm that this is something worth investigating, and something that should be worth bearing in mind whenever you see tweets saying, oh look, our rape gang inquiry is going so well. Because from the looks of it, it's lackluster at best, and actively detrimental to survivors they are talking to at worst. If you've given money to either of these things, don't beat yourself up too much for it. Again, I could be completely wrong about the inquiry. I'm just going through things I've seen online that are being blocked by people involved with the rape gang inquiry, and going through basically how Restore Britain actually is quite useless so far. Again, as said before, it was in its infancy, and maybe it could grow, but if their idea to grow is more petitions, pointless. Don't give them 25 quid. You can literally just set up these petitions yourself. If you want to be useful, join Reform, be a foot soldier for Reform. You're a cog in a massive machine, and frankly being a cog in a massive machine can help you climb that ladder anyway if you have larger aspirations in life. Frankly, that's where I am at this point in time too, so take from that what you will, but I thought that this was an incredibly important video to make. One, to make fun of Restore Britain for being a joke, and two, to really cover the important parts of the inquiry. But with that, I think I will leave it there. So if you enjoy what I do, please do subscribe, leave a comment, and leave a like, of course. You can also become a channel member, or leave super chats or super thanks on this video. On top of that, Laughing at the Guardian will be Sunday, videos out as and when I can make them, and next week I am away, so you will not be getting any content from me, I'm afraid, but hopefully this video has made up for that, because I put a lot of work into the research for this one and wanted to make sure that I didn't say anything that would be completely wrong. I am literally just reporting things that I am seeing. But regular schedule will be back in October. Right, with that, that's everything I had for you for today. So once again, thank you very much for watching. Do join Reform, do be an activist for Reform, and until next time, goodbye.